Listen to the brutal truth about your desperate, pathetic need to look smart. You have been heavily programmed by a weak society to believe that intelligence is something you must constantly broadcast to the world. Every time you enter a room, you feel a burning, biological urge to prove your competence. You constantly correct people in meaningless conversations. You eagerly reveal your massive plans before you even start them, and you argue with absolute idiots on the internet just to establish your intellectual dominance. Let me tell you exactly what this behavior actually is. It is not a display of power. It is the absolute definition of a fragile, screaming ego. You are heavily addicted to the cheap, temporary validation of looking like the smartest guy in the room, and this disgusting addiction is actively destroying your empire. When you constantly show all of your cards and demonstrate exactly how much, you are making a massive strategic mistake. You are handing your enemies a completely free, highly detailed map of your entire psychological operating system. True power never ever needs to announce itself. The men who actually run this world, the absolute apex predators of human history, do not waste their vital energy trying to impress the mediocre crowd. They operate with terrifying, cold-blooded precision in the absolute dark. Your need to be recognized as a genius is a massive vulnerability that can be easily manipulated by anyone who understands human nature. When you talk too much and flex your intellect, you instantly trigger the deep, toxic insecurities of the people around you. You awaken their envy, their resentment, and their desperate need to bring you down to their miserable level. You voluntarily place a massive, glowing red target directly on your own back simply because you could not control the pathetic, childish urge to sound smart for 5 minutes. This is a terminal disease of the modern man. You want the applause before you have even done the brutal work. You want the crown before you have conquered the territory. You must aggressively, violently execute this weak version of yourself. You must learn the dark, terrifying art of silencing your ego. When you sit at the table with weak people, you must let them talk, let them boast, and let them completely expose their foolishness. While you sit in absolute cold silence, stop correcting the narrative. Stop trying to save idiots from their own stupidity. Your intelligence is not a cheap party trick designed to entertain the masses. It is a highly dangerous weapon that must be kept entirely hidden in the dark until the exact moment of execution. If you cannot control your own mouth, you have absolutely zero chance of controlling your destiny. Shut up and step into the shadows. Let them drown in their own desperate noise while you preserve your vital energy for the monumental battles ahead. Silence is not a lack of words, it is a heavy, impenetrable shield. To completely dominate the matrix, you must fundamentally understand the brutal law of the target. Society is a massive leveling machine entirely designed to crush anyone who dares to stand out too early. If you openly display your high intelligence, your massive ambition, and your relentless drive, you immediately become a massive threat to the comfortable, lazy existence of the herd. The nail that sticks out is violently hammered down. This is an unbreakable law of human psychology. When you aggressively show your fangs, the world instantly raises its shields. Your competitors start watching your every single move. Your false friends start plotting your sabotage behind your back. And the system actively throws heavy obstacles in your path to test your resolve. Why would you ever voluntarily choose to fight an uphill battle against the massive resistance of an envious crowd? It is a monumentally stupid strategy. The dark Stoic masters understood that the ultimate form of power is the power of complete invisibility. You must intentionally craft a brilliant, flawless camouflage of absolute mediocrity. You must learn how to play the fool, how to look average, and how to blend seamlessly into the pathetic background noise of society. When people look at you, they should see absolutely nothing special. They should see a harmless, predictable, completely average individual who poses zero threat to their fragile egos. This is not weakness. This is supreme, terrifying tactical superiority. When you completely lower their defenses by appearing harmless, you essentially render yourself invisible to their radar. The system stops fighting you because it does not even recognize you as a player on the board. You are completely free to build your massive empire in the dark without the constant toxic interference of jealous losers. You must willingly swallow your pride and let people severely underestimate you. Let them talk down to you. Let them assume they are smarter, faster, and better than you. You must derive a sick, glorious pleasure from their massive delusion because their ignorance is your absolute greatest advantage, while they are busy celebrating their fake, superficial superiority. You are quietly accumulating heavy resources, sharpening your iron, blades, and building a fortress that they cannot even comprehend. By the time they finally realize you are a massive, unstoppable force of nature, it will be entirely too late for them to do anything about it. You will have completely surrounded them while they thought you were just a harmless peasant. The ego screams for immediate recognition, but the Shadow Emperor demands absolute, ultimate victory. Conceal your intentions, hide your intellect, and let them sleep peacefully in their ignorance. Every single time you successfully hide a brilliant thought from an unworthy crowd, you are actively solidifying your mental fortress. This hidden reserve of silent power is exactly what will make you completely unstoppable. When you perfectly execute the art of appearing average, you unlocked the devastating superpower of weaponized ignorance, because the weak crowd is entirely obsessed with talking and proving their own worth. They are incredibly easily manipulated by a silent observer. When you deliberately play the fool, people completely drop their heavy psychological masks. They assume you are too stupid to understand their real motives, so they openly reveal their darkest secrets, their hidden agendas, and their most pathetic vulnerabilities right in front of your face. You become an invisible ghost walking directly through their highly guarded fortresses. They will freely hand you the exact weapons you need to completely destroy them simply because they do not view you as a threat. You must treat every social interaction not as a stage to perform, but as a massive intelligence gathering operation. You ask simple, naive questions, you nod aggressively, and you let them completely dominate the conversation. The more they talk, the more they bleed critical information. The arrogant man is incredibly easy to defeat because he is completely blinded by the massive glare of his own ego. He believes his own lies and he assumes everyone else is an idiot. You must actively feed his delusion. By making him feel superior, you completely paralyze his defensive instincts. You must become a cold clinical scientist, observing the chaotic, predictable behavior of primitive animals in a cage. You do not argue with them. You do not correct their flawed logic, and you do not ever try to educate them. You simply collect the data. This level of extreme emotional control requires terrifying iron discipline. It requires you to completely detach from the human need to be right. When an absolute moron insults your intelligence or tries to explain something to you that you already mastered 10 years ago, your biological instinct is to instantly, violently crush him with your knowledge. You must brutally suppress that weak instinct. You must smile, nod, and let him walk away feeling like a victorious king. You are not losing the argument. You are actively winning the entire war. You're trading the cheap, useless currency of social validation for the massive, undeniable currency of absolute leverage. You hold all the cards because you know exactly who they are, but they have absolutely no idea what kind of monster they are actually dealing with. Right now, you are giving away your most valuable data for free just to get a quick hit of dopamine from a completely irrelevant crowd. Stop leaking your power. Weaponize your silence. Use their arrogance against them and turn their own massive egos into the exact trap that will inevitably destroy them. When they finally realize it, they have been speaking to a massive stone wall. Disguised as a peasant, the sheer psychological terror will completely break their spirit. You will hold absolute dominion over their minds without ever raising your voice. The ultimate glorious payoff of this brutal 6-month protocol of silence and camouflage is the unseen execution. You have completely suppressed your fragile ego. You have gathered massive amounts of heavy intelligence in the dark, and you have allowed the weak world to entirely underestimate your potential. You have been quietly, relentlessly forging your iron in the absolute terrifying silence of the shadows. Now the architecture of your empire is completely finished, and the trap is perfectly set. The beautiful, terrifying reality of hiding your true intelligence is that when you finally decide to strike, the impact is absolutely devastating. Because they never saw you as a massive threat, your enemies have zero defenses prepared. They are completely exposed, comfortable, and lazy. When you finally unleash the massive, overwhelming force of your accumulated power, it hits them like a colossal, invisible freight train in the dark. They will be in a state of absolute, total shock. The people who mocked you, the people who talked down to you, and the people who assumed you were just a harmless, average pawn will watch in sheer, horrifying disbelief as you effortlessly crush their domains and take absolute control of the board. They will scramble desperately to understand how this happened, but they will fail because they were entirely blinded by their own pathetic arrogance. This is the ultimate brutal revenge of the Shadow Emperor. You do not defeat your enemies by arguing with them in the mud. You defeat them by completely outgrowing them in the dark and rendering their entire existence totally irrelevant. You have successfully weaponized the element of massive surprise. You have proven that true absolute power is never loud, it is never flashy, and it never begs for the cheap approval of the crowd. It is a cold, monolithic, silent force of nature that simply dictates reality on its own, uncompromising terms. You have evolved from a reactive, emotional puppet desperately seeking validation into a terrifying, untouchable architect of destiny. The weak man flexes his muscles in the mirror, while the dangerous man silently loads his weapon in the dark. You must strictly carry this dark philosophy with you for the rest of your existence. Never ever reveal the full, absolute extent of your capabilities. Always keep a massive, heavy reserve of power completely hidden from the world. Let them continuously think they have, figured out. Let them endlessly assume they know your limits. And then whenever the moment requires it, shatter their fragile illusions with terrifying, cold-blooded execution. You are the Shadow Empire. You move in absolute silence. You observe everything, and you completely conquer without ever making a single sound. Now, close your mouth, lower your head, and get back to the brutal, silent work. Let them sleep. You have an empire to build. The Matrix will never see you coming. The clock is ticking, and your ultimate victory demands your absolute, focused isolation.